Hello, in this video I will be going through a few problems from practice problem set 1-4, but let me lead my way into this. You may have noticed that in writing conclusions for the arguments in practice problem sets 1-2 and 1-3, you could simply copy the conclusions word for word. You could do this because I very carefully selected examples where the conclusions were expressed in such a way that you could do that. Here's how conclusions must be expressed when we write them. 1, they have to be written as complete sentences. 2, they have to be expressed as statements rather than as some other grammatical form. 3, the conclusion has to make sense by itself. And 4, we have to write the conclusion in a way so that it contains all and only the information that the arguer intends as part of their conclusion. For practice problem sets 1-2 and 1-3 again, I did pick examples where the conclusions were already written that way. But this week we're going to be studying examples where the conclusions are not written that way, and so we need to do some rewriting or rewording of the conclusions. In particular, in practice problem set 1-4, the conclusions of the arguments are all expressed either as rhetorical questions or as imperatives. Let me talk about each of those in turn a little bit, and then I will proceed to some examples. Rhetorical questions are grammatically in the form of a question, but they are asked for a purpose other than to get the information that the question appears to request. So when we're faced with a conclusion expressed as a rhetorical question, we need to rewrite it in order to accurately convey the statement the arguer is using the rhetorical question to express. Turning now to imperatives. The word imperative is the name of the grammatical form that's used to express orders or commands. And again, orders and commands wouldn't be statements. That is, an order is neither true nor false. However, we do sometimes use that grammatical form of the imperative to express statements. And when that happens, our job, at least if it's the conclusion of an argument and we're writing the conclusion, our job is to reword, rephrase, rewrite that conclusion to express a statement. Generally, with rewriting imperatives as statements, that's pretty easy. We can generally just start with the phrase you should or one should at the beginning. Now, there may be a few little quirks involved in doing that, and I'll talk about that as I talk about a few examples from 1-4. In 1-4, we will also use any premise introducers or conclusion introducers to help us find the conclusions, and we will write those introducers as much as a matter of review as anything else. All right, let me start with number 1, which was from a horoscope that said, doing the same thing and expecting different results is one definition of insanity. So, explore and experiment. I hope you remember that the word so is a conclusion introducer. I'll simply abbreviate conclusion introducer as CI. After the conclusion introducer so, this horoscope says explore and experiment. Well, that's expressed in the imperative. In other words, it's an order or a command. Explore and experiment does not have a truth value, but clearly it's being used here as a way of expressing the conclusion of an argument. And a conclusion of an argument has to be either true or false. It has to have a truth value. So we can easily rewrite this to make clear the statement that it is being used to express. You could start with you should, or you can start with one should, and then just continue copying the rest of it. One should explore and experiment. All right, let me turn now to number 6. This is also from a horoscope and says, on the 11th, adopt a new friend at an animal shelter. Only a stray could understand what you really feel. There are no introducers here, so let's think in terms of adding an introducer at the start of the second sentence. If we were to add therefore, we wouldn't have anything that made any sense, but if we add because, we can obviously keep the intended meaning here. On the 11th, adopt a new friend at an animal shelter, because only a stray could understand what you really feel. So that tells us then that the second sentence must be the premise, and the first sentence is expressing the conclusion. On the 11th, adopt a new friend at an animal shelter. That, however, is expressed as an imperative, so we need to do some rewriting. I, however, am not going to add you should or one should at the very beginning. I'm going to add it right before the verb adopt. In other words, this time I think I'll use you should rather than one should, just for the sake of variety. On the 11th, you should adopt a new friend at an animal shelter. All right, let me go now to number 7, which is about a drug called Cialis. It's a prescription drug that's used to treat erectile dysfunction. And this was written by the manufacturer of the drug. It says, don't take Cialis if you take nitrates, as the combination can cause a sudden, unsafe drop in blood pressure. I hope you noticed here the premise introducer as. By the way, the word as used by itself to introduce a premise is perhaps the very easiest introducer to overlook. I think that's not only because it's such a short word, though that's probably part of it, but I think that's probably also due to the fact that the word as is used very commonly in English with a whole lot of different meanings that have nothing to do with introducing a part of an argument. However, here we have as introducing the premise. So the premise is that this combination can cause a sudden unsafe drop in blood pressure, meaning that the conclusion has to be the other thing that's said here. It's expressed, however, as a command, as follows. Don't take Cialis if you take nitrates as the combination, I'm sorry, I went too far there. Don't take Cialis if you take nitrates. Well, I notice that the pronoun you is used there, so I don't want to have the pronoun one and then the pronoun you mismatched in the same sentence. So I'm going to use you at the beginning of this. But we have don't. Notice the N apostrophe T. This is telling us not to do something, or that we should not do something. So what we could do to rewrite number 7's conclusion as a statement would be the following. You should not take Cialis if you take nitrates. All right, I'm going to do one more in this video, and that's number 8. This requires some context to understand, so I gave you a note with context. It's a letter to the editor of the LA Times in which the word teeth means the power to enforce something. The letter was written shortly after the voters in the city of Los Angeles passed a new city charter. The city charter is kind of like the Constitution, but for a city, and it describes the job duties, including the restrictions on the powers of various city officials, including the city's controller. The controller is sort of like the chief financial officer of the city. However, this new city charter that had been passed restricted the powers of the city's controller. At that time, the controller had been investigating allegations that several of the members of the city council had misused campaign finance funds. And this letter to the editor was written in that context. It reads as follows. Apparently, some folks in City Hall just realized that the new city charter gives the controller the power to investigate, but no teeth. In other words, but no power to enforce anything. Given that, how else can the controller serve the people, other than by gathering information and making public the results of the investigation? I hope you were reading along and noticed the comma after given that. I tried to kind of exaggerate or emphasize the pause in this sentence after the comma. Given that, comma, how else can the controller serve the people, other than by gathering information and making public the results of the investigation? If there were no comma after given that, no comma immediately after given that would be a premise introducer. However, when there's a comma immediately after given that, we're looking at a conclusion introducer. And you'll notice that the letter writer expresses the conclusion as a rhetorical question. How else can the controller serve the people other than by gathering information and making public the results of the investigation? Well, I hope it's clear to you from the first sentence in this argument, that is from the letter writer's premise, that the letter writer's conclusion, the rhetorical question, is being used to express the statement that the only way the controller can serve the people is by gathering information and making public the results of the investigation. That's the only way. All right, I hope that this video has been helpful to you. I will see you very soon again in another video. So long for now. Bye-bye.